The ocean has always been described as a place of freedom, vast and untamed, a canvas where the winds paint their restless brushstrokes and the tides recite the oldest poems of the earth. Yet beneath its beauty, there are traps invisible to those who do not know where to look, snares made not by nature but by human hands, webs of nylon and plastic drifting silently across the currents. They are called ghost nets, and though they are nothing more than discarded tools, they have become hunters without masters, killers without conscience, nightmares that never sleep. Unlike storms which roar and pass, unlike predators which hunt and rest, these nets persist, floating and entangling, choking and killing, year after year, century after century. The tragedy of ghost nets is that they are not alive, and yet they behave with the relentless hunger of a living monster, haunting the seas long after the fishermen who used them are gone. Imagine for a moment the story of a single net. Once it was new, woven tightly, used by hands hardened by salt and sun, cast into waters to bring fish for market and for family. But one day it was torn, snagged on rock, or perhaps too heavy with catch, and so it was cut free, abandoned. From that moment it ceased to serve and began to haunt. The ocean lifted it, currents carried it, waves hid it, until it became something else, a drifting labyrinth ready to ensnare anything that crossed its path. A turtle swimming gracefully found its flippers trapped, unable to rise for breath. A dolphin curious about its threads twisted and drowned. Fish meant to escape predators were caught in silence. Seabirds diving for prey became prey themselves. And still the net drifted on, killing blindly, endlessly. There are estimates that every year hundreds of thousands of marine animals are caught in these phantom traps. Seals suffocate, whales drag nets across thousands of kilometers until exhaustion overcomes them. Sharks are sliced by plastic that never rots. Unlike wood or rope, nylon does not decay. It can remain for centuries, long after ships that once carried it have rusted away. The sea becomes not a sanctuary but a maze of invisible death, a nightmare stitched from the arrogance of human convenience. It is not a storm that can be predicted, not a predator that can be understood, but an endless persistence, a reminder that what we abandon never truly leaves. Philosophically, ghost nets embody one of humanity's deepest mistakes, believing that what we discard disappears. On land we bury, we hide, we forget, but the ocean has no landfill where things vanish. It has currents, and those currents return what we think we have lost. A net cut loose is not gone. It is transformed into something worse. It becomes the shadow side of our inventions, the mirror of our neglect. To stand upon shore and look at horizon is to see beauty, but beneath that beauty drift our ghosts, the remnants of choices made carelessly, haunting us in silence. For communities that depend on the sea, ghost nets are not abstract tragedy. Fishermen lose catch because nets trap fish wastefully. Divers encounter carcasses wrapped in threads, their masks fogging with grief. Coastal villagers find washed-up turtles strangled by plastic knots. Each encounter is wound not only upon ecology, but upon psyche. To know that something designed to provide has become a thief is dissonance hard to bear. It is as if tool once trusted has betrayed, as if hammer continued striking long after hand let go. The ocean remembers, and it reminds us. Legends of the sea once spoke of krakens dragging ships beneath waves, of sirens luring men to drown, of sea monsters whose tentacles could encircle boats. Today the ghost net plays that role. It is faceless, silent, yet deadly. It does not sing, but it ensnares. It does not roar, but it strangles. It does not attack, but it waits. And in some ways this makes it more terrifying than myth, because it is real, measurable, present in every sea from Arctic to Antarctic. The modern nightmare of the ocean wears not scales or claws but nylon threads. To fall asleep, thinking of these nets, is to imagine drifting through dream where ocean floor is filled with webs, not spun by spiders, but by our own neglect. Creatures struggle like marionettes tangled in strings, their movements growing weaker, until silence claims them. Above, waves glitter with moonlight, indifferent. The nightmare is not only for animals but for us, because we too are caught in threads of our creation. Our health depends on oceans, our climate, our breath itself, yet we have woven a labyrinth that suffocates the very lungs of Earth. Yet within tragedy there is revelation. To know of ghost nets is to confront permanence of our actions. Every choice, every discard, is thread woven into larger tapestry. If a net can drift for centuries, so too can our decisions echo beyond our lifetimes. This truth is heavy, but it is also liberating, for it means our efforts to heal can also persist. A rescued whale, a recovered net, a clean shore, these too echo. The nightmare is real, but it is not final. The most tragic days of ghost nets are those when entire pods of dolphins are found strangled, when coral reefs suffocate beneath tangles, when seabirds fall from sky with stomachs full of plastic threads. But the lesson of these days is not only grief, it is awakening. For just as nets drift silently, so too does awareness spread, moving from shore to shore, heart to heart. To speak of ghost nets is to cut through silence, to refuse to allow nightmare to remain unseen. So tonight, as you drift into sleep, imagine threads not as prison but as warning. Imagine each strand glowing faintly, marking where we have erred, but also guiding where we can walk carefully. Ghost nets haunt the ocean, but they also remind us of bond between human hand and sea. They whisper truth, that nothing we do is forgotten, that our ghosts remain, that to honor the ocean, we must untangle not only nets but ourselves. The sea has always been a place where hunters and hunted enact their endless drama. Sharks stalk schools of fish, whales lunge with open jaws, seabirds dive with precision, each predator following the rhythms etched by millions of years of evolution. Yet ghost nets do not belong to this cycle. They are hunters without instinct, killers without hunger, snares without mind. They catch not because they need, but because they are there, drifting endlessly, ensnaring endlessly. This absence of intention makes them more terrifying, because one cannot negotiate with plastic, one cannot frighten it, one cannot flee from it once it has wrapped itself around fin or throat. A living predator will strike and leave, but ghost nets never stop. Imagine swimming through azure waters, where sun filters and shafts of light, illuminating the slow dance of plankton. Suddenly you encounter a shape drifting, translucent yet solid, threads hanging like jellyfish tendrils, tangled masses catching light like sinister webs. A curious turtle approaches, mistaking seaweed, and within moments its flipper twists into loop. It struggles, but every movement tightens noose. Hours pass, exhaustion grows, lungs burn. What began as exploration ends as suffocation. This scene repeats daily across oceans, unseen by human eye, yet echoing through ecosystem as each death removes link in chain. The tragedy deepens when larger creatures become entangled. Whales, vast and majestic, dragging hundreds of kilograms of net, their skin cut by nylon slicing deeper with each stroke. They travel across entire oceans burdened by weight, feeding less, surfacing with effort. Some survive weeks, others collapse in exhaustion and sink to abyss, their bodies still shackled. Divers who witness such beings describe eyes full of suffering, as if creature understands betrayal of ocean it trusted. The ghost net does not discriminate. It claims both mighty and small. These nets also devastate coral reefs, which are not mere rocks but living cities. As nets drift, they snag upon corals, smothering polyps, breaking delicate branches, leaving barren rubble. Fish that depended on coral for shelter lose refuge. Entire communities collapse. Ghost nets are vandals of architecture built over centuries, tearing down in hours what took decades to grow. And because plastic does not rot, the net moves on, continuing its destruction elsewhere, carrying fragments of coral like trophies of its violence. Scientists estimate that ghost gear accounts for a significant portion of ocean plastic, yet its threat is magnified because it continues to function as weapon long after abandonment. Unlike bottles or bags, which pollute passively, nets actively kill. Their design, once useful, becomes curse. Knots hold firm, meshes trap, threads cut. Even when torn, pieces continue to ensnare. It is as if we forged monsters and released them to wander forever. Culturally, ghost nets reveal paradox of progress. Humanity designed durable materials to serve need, but durability without responsibility becomes menace. We sought strength and created weakness, sought abundance and created waste. The hunter has become haunted, because fishermen who once relied on nets now face empty seas caused partly by their own tools turned rogue. This irony is a sharp reminder that our inventions carry double edges, that utility without foresight breeds nightmare. In myths of old, monsters often arose from human arrogance. Medusa cursed for pride, Prometheus punished for fire, Icarus fallen for flight. In same way, ghost nets are modern myth made fleshless. They are our Icarus wings, our hubris floating upon currents, punishing creatures who never sought them. They remind us that arrogance does not vanish when hidden beneath waves. It resurfaces, wrapped around flipper of turtle, knotted in gills of fish, strangling life silently. But there is also resilience. In recent years, divers and activists have formed ghost net hunters, reversing roles by seeking and removing these plastic predators. They descend into depths with knives and bags, cutting free corals, rescuing turtles, hauling up tons of nylon. Each recovered net is not only material removed but symbol reclaimed, proof that nightmare can be confronted. Their work is arduous, dangerous, but it transforms helplessness into action. These divers are modern heroes, their weapons not swords but determination, their battles not against dragons but against ghosts we ourselves unleashed. Philosophically, ghost nets challenge us to consider responsibility beyond presence. If a net continues killing for centuries, who owns its violence? The fishermen who cut it loose? The company that produced nylon? The society that demanded endless catch? Or humanity as whole? This question extends beyond nets, to all our discards, all our ghosts. Who is responsible for plastic bottle drifting in gyre, for microfibers in fish, for carbon heating seas? Responsibility, like net, is tangled, and untangling requires humility. At night, when dreams come, ghost nets manifest as webs woven across subconscious. You walk along shore and find sea shimmering with threads, glistening like silver, yet every sparkle is snare. You step and are caught, struggling as more threads tighten. The ocean in dream becomes not freedom but prison, not vastness but labyrinth. You awaken breathless, realizing dream is truth hidden beneath surface. The nightmare is real, even if unseen. Yet even within nightmare there is hope. Every act of recovery, every child taught to respect ocean, every innovation designing biodegradable nets, these are stitches mending tear. If ghost nets are hunters without masters, then humanity must become healer without hesitation. Our responsibility is not only to stop creating ghosts, but to exorcise those already drifting. The ocean is vast, yes, but our determination can be vaster. To speak of ghost nets is to speak of shadows we cast upon sea. They are reminders that progress without wisdom becomes peril, that durability without conscience becomes curse. But to confront them is to show that even nightmares can be unmade. The hunters without masters can be captured, the traps undone, the ocean freed. The question remains, will we act before nightmare consumes too much, or will we continue sleeping as ghosts multiply? The world speaks often of epidemics that strike humanity, diseases that spread through contact, through air, through blood. But the ocean too suffers from its own epidemic, one without fever yet filled with death, one without visible scars on land but with uncountable wounds beneath the waves. Ghost nets are that epidemic, silent yet vast, invisible from satellites, yet covering entire gyres, weaving through every current like veins of shadow. They multiply not because they breed, but because they endure, because nylon refuses to yield to time, because once cast away they remain as if time itself were powerless. This is an epidemic without cure, unless we choose to intervene, without doctors, unless we ourselves become healers, without medicine, unless humility becomes antidote. Imagine walking into a forest and discovering snares hung upon every branch, invisible wires stretched across paths, animals caught and left to rot. The forest would feel cursed, haunted. Yet this is what divers encounter beneath the sea, moving through beautiful coral gardens, only to find corpses entangled, shells cracked beneath plastic, fish skeletons wrapped like ornaments upon invisible strings. The epidemic hides beneath beauty, and because it is unseen by majority, its tragedy is amplified by ignorance. What we do not witness, we do not mourn, and what we do not mourn, we do not change. The numbers are staggering. Millions of tons of fishing gear are lost or abandoned each year, forming drifting continents of entanglement. In certain regions, ghost gear makes up nearly half of all large marine plastic, yet numbers alone cannot convey suffering. One whale dragging net for months, one turtle suffocating, one coral reef broken apart. Each story is universe collapsed. Each life lost is thread cut from grand tapestry of the ocean. The epidemic is measured not only in tons but in silences, in songs of whales interrupted, in migrations unfinished, in reefs turned into graveyards. For coastal communities, the epidemic carries economic cost. Nets drifting continue to trap fish that will never be eaten, reducing populations, straining livelihoods. Fishermen return with empty nets, because ghost nets have already harvested indiscriminately. Tourism suffers when divers encounter not wonder but tragedy, when beaches are littered with plastic skeletons. Even shipping lanes face danger, as large nets entangle propellers, endangering crews and vessels. The epidemic is ecological, cultural, and economic, spreading across all layers of relationship between humanity and sea. Yet unlike natural epidemics, this one is entirely of our making. It is not virus born of mutation, not bacterium carried by wind, but artifact of choice. We design plastics to last, and they do. We design nets to capture, and they do, forever. This epidemic has no origin beyond us, no villain beyond reflection in mirror. That truth is heavy, but it is also empowering. For what we created we can uncreate, what we unleashed we can restrain. Responsibility is burden but also power. Philosophically, the epidemic of ghost nets challenges perception of permanence. We live believing that our discards vanish, that once out of sight they are gone. Yet here is proof they persist longer than monuments, longer than empires. The Colossus of Rhodes has fallen, yet nets from decades ago still drift. Castles crumble, yet nylon remains. Ghost nets are a reminder that modern artifacts may be legacy less noble than pyramids or cathedrals, that our true monuments may be our waste. To accept this is to confront uncomfortable truth that we are builders not only of beauty, but of nightmares. Still, in darkness there are lights. Organizations across globe have risen to fight epidemic. In India, communities have created programs where fishermen are paid to bring in old nets rather than discard. In Europe, divers organize retrieval expeditions, bringing up tons of ghost gear annually. In Pacific, islanders weave recovered nets into art, transforming curse into symbol, horror into awareness. These efforts are not enough to end epidemic, but they are stitches upon wound, signs that healing is possible. At night, as you close eyes, epidemic becomes dream. You wander through vast ocean of fabric, threads stretching in every direction, creatures struggling like puppets caught. You feel weight of plastic against skin, cold and unyielding, and realize there is no exit, no end, unless something is cut. The dream is claustrophobic, pressing, suffocating, until awakening comes as relief. But truth is dream is reality beneath waves, unfolding endlessly. The lesson is urgent. Epidemics ignored spread, ghost nets left untouched, multiply their toll, accumulate their victims, weave denser labyrinths. To delay is to consent, to forget is to fuel. Yet to act is to cure, slowly, imperfectly, but surely. Every net removed is life spared. Every innovation in biodegradable material is life secured. Every awareness raised is prevention achieved. The epidemic can be confronted, but it requires that we see, that we name, that we accept responsibility. The silent epidemic of the seas whispers through currents, threads its way into food we eat, into climate we breathe. It is not distant tragedy, but present inheritance. To face it is not only to protect dolphins and turtles, but to protect ourselves, for we too are bound in net of interdependence. The ocean is not separate, it is bloodstream of planet, and its wounds are our wounds. To heal it is to heal ourselves. So as you drift toward sleep, let thought linger on fragility of balance. Epidemics remind us that life is delicate, that neglect has cost, that silence is complicity. But they also remind us that resilience is possible, that healing is choice. The ocean waits, burdened but not broken, haunted but not surrendered. Its nightmare is ours, but so too can be its recovery. The nets drift, but so do we. And in our drifting there can be purpose, there can be redemption. The sea has always been a place of passage, a vast highway of currents that carry whales across hemispheres, that lift plankton from depths to nourish entire ecosystems, that shape climates and feed civilizations. Yet through these same currents drift the labyrinths of our neglect, forgotten nets that twist and knot themselves into deadly mazes. To swim through certain regions of the ocean today is to move not through free water but through corridors of entanglement, as if the sea itself had been rewoven into prison. These labyrinths are not designed, yet they are more effective than any trap, because they are everywhere, because they multiply invisibly, because once entered they are nearly impossible to escape. Imagine a diver descending along reef wall where schools of fish shimmer like liquid silver. At first, beauty overwhelms, then shadows intrude. Tangled masses of nylon hang suspended, strands covered in algae, swaying like sinister curtains. Small fish dart in, some finding refuge, others finding tomb. A turtle struggles half-hidden, flipper twisted, eyes wide. The diver approaches with knife, cutting carefully, each slice against nylon like liberation, yet also like confession, acknowledging that it is we who built this labyrinth, we who filled sea with walls. This scene repeats daily, thousands of times across world. Divers turned rescuers, labyrinths turned graveyards. What makes ghost net labyrinths especially tragic is their persistence. Unlike traps of myth, which dissolve when monster dies, these remain long after purpose has ended. Fishermen who discarded them decades ago are gone, but nets endure, drifting still, catching still. They are traps without builders, prisons without guards, yet victims remain endless. In this way they resemble curses of legend, punishments that outlive those who invoke them, haunting generations. Ghost nets are curses written in plastic, binding sea with threads of forever. The labyrinth spreads beyond visible. Ocean currents carry fragments, thousands of kilometers, across boundaries, across time. A net lost in North Atlantic may wash ashore in West Africa. A fragment abandoned in Pacific may choke turtle in South America. These labyrinths are global, stitching continents together with invisible suffering. They remind us that ocean is one body, that neglect in one place becomes nightmare in another. There is no elsewhere in sea, no away in water. All drifts together, all knots together. Philosophically, the labyrinth of ghost nets mirrors labyrinth of human choices. We wander paths built by convenience, by haste, by profit, only to discover walls closing in, exits blocked. Our civilization too risks entanglement in threads of its own making, plastic, carbon, waste. Just as turtle struggles against nylon, we struggle against systems of consumption and dependency. The labyrinth is external and internal, woven not only of nylon but of desires. To face it requires more than knives. It requires courage to change patterns, to retrace steps, to seek exits unimagined. Legends of labyrinths often speak of monsters within. In Crete it was Minotaur, in modern seas it is ghost nets themselves. They are monsters woven, not born, yet equally relentless. In myths, heroes enter labyrinths with thread of Ariadne to find way back. Today, divers carry reels of line, guiding their way through tangles. The symbolism is striking, as if ancient myths anticipated modern reality, as if humanity has always feared being trapped by its own constructions. The labyrinth of forgotten nets is our Minotaur, silent and merciless. Ecologically, labyrinths devastate biodiversity. Seals caught, birds strangled, reefs broken. Ghost nets also act as rafts, carrying invasive species across oceans, allowing barnacles, crabs, even fish to colonize distant shores. Thus, nets not only kill directly but alter ecosystems, spreading imbalance. A labyrinth once entered reshapes beyond immediate, rippling outward. This is nightmare of complexity, where one abandoned net changes not only single life but entire communities. Yet even labyrinths can be mapped. Activists create databases, marking locations of ghost nets, using satellites, sonar, even fishermen reports to identify hotspots. International collaborations share knowledge, coordinate removal. Each recovered net is a corridor cleared, a path reopened. Though labyrinth seems endless, each effort cuts passage of hope. These acts prove labyrinth is not eternal, that maps can be drawn, that exits exist if courage persists. In Dream, labyrinth manifests as endless corridors of thread beneath waves, lit by dim green light, creatures swimming endlessly searching for way out. You wander too, your limbs caught, your breath shortening. Panic rises until you remember you carry knife. You cut, you free, and corridor opens to vast blue. Dream teaches lesson. Labyrinths exist, but so do exits, so do choices, so does resilience. The ocean does not desire labyrinths. It desires flow, openness, movement. To restore it is to honor its nature. To leave labyrinths drifting is to betray that nature. Our choice is clear. We can wander forever in maze of our own making, or we can cut threads, reclaim openness, restore freedom to waves. Ghost nets are nightmares, but nightmares vanish when light is brought. To bring light is task of our time, our duty to see, our promise to future. Among all tragedies that ghost nets have written upon the waters, Few stories capture the scale of suffering like those of the whales who become entangled in their invisible chains. These giants of the sea, once worshipped as gods, once feared as leviathans, once celebrated in songs across countless cultures, are reduced to prisoners by threads meant for fish. To imagine a creature longer than a bus, heavier than dozens of cars, dragging nylon across entire oceans, is to feel the absurd cruelty of our age. The whale, that should roam free, becomes a beast in bondage, bearing chains that never rust, chains that no blacksmith forged, but that human negligence created. This story is not singular, for thousands of whales each year suffer this fate. Yet to tell of one is to speak of all. Picture a humpback whale rising from the depths, breaching in a spray of foam and sunlight. Its body arcs gracefully, but tangled across its pectoral fin is a net, threads slicing into skin, cutting deeper with every movement. The breach is not celebration but struggle, an attempt to shake free, to rid itself of burden. Yet nylon does not yield. It tightens, digs, resists. The whale dives again, dragging massive plastic that weighs less in water but carries deadly weight in exhaustion. Days turn to weeks, wounds fester, barnacles grow upon net itself, transforming it into grotesque extension of body. The whale continues to sing, but songs grow weaker, filled with notes of fatigue. For scientists who track these entanglements, the details are devastating. Whales have been found with nets wrapped around jaws, preventing them from feeding, starving them slowly. Others carry gear across thousands of kilometers, their migration paths altered, their calves left vulnerable because mothers cannot provide. Necropsies reveal deep grooves carved into blubber, infections spreading. Each wound is testimony not of natural predator but of artificial ghost, threads without mercy. Unlike harpoons that kill quickly, ghost nets kill slowly, stretching suffering across time, making agony measure of miles. This suffering extends beyond individuals. Whales are keystone species, shaping ecosystems with their feeding, their movements, their very presence. A whale weakened or lost alters balance, rippling through food webs. Fewer whales mean fewer nutrients recycled, fewer krill controlled, fewer songs echoing through depths. The ocean loses not only body but role, not only creature but culture. To imagine seas without whales is to imagine forests without trees, skies without clouds, a silence unnatural. Philosophically, entangled whale becomes symbol of humanity itself. We too are vast in potential, capable of awe, creators of beauty, singers of songs. Yet we too drag chains of our own making, systems that cut into flesh of planet, patterns that exhaust, choices that entangle. Like whale, we breach seeking freedom, only to find nets tightening. The image of whale burdened by nylon is mirror held to our civilization, a reminder that greatness without care becomes tragedy, that strength without wisdom becomes weakness. Yet in some stories, there is rescue. Teams of divers and marine biologists dedicate lives to disentangling whales. They approach cautiously, small boats alongside giants, knives in hand. With patience and courage they cut nets, slice threads, free fins. Sometimes it takes hours, sometimes days, but when final strand falls away, whale surges upward, breaching not in struggle but in triumph. Witnesses describe feeling vibration in chest, as if freed whale sang thanks. These moments are victories against nightmare, light against labyrinth. Each rescued whale is proof that ghosts can be defeated, that even chains across oceans can be broken. But rescues are rare, for ocean is vast and whales roam, where boats cannot follow. For every whale freed, countless others die unseen, their bodies sinking silently, carrying nets to seafloor where they continue killing as traps for crabs and fish. These underwater graves are hidden, their tragedy unrecorded, yet they are many. The ocean floor is littered with bones and nylon, a macabre gallery of forgotten giants. In dream you may see whale carrying net across endless blue, its movements slowed, its songs muffled. You swim alongside, trying to cut threads, but every slice reveals more, every knot tighter. You awaken with sense of futility, but also urgency. Dream whispers truth, that unless we change, whales will continue to bear our chains. Ocean will continue to echo with songs of pain. The whale that carried chains across oceans is not only a story of suffering but warning. It tells us that durability without compassion creates prisons, that negligence creates chains, that even gods of sea can be humbled by plastic. Yet it also tells us that chains can be cut, that ghosts can be hunted, that nightmares can be undone. The question is not whether we can free ocean, but whether we will. So tonight, as you drift towards sleep, imagine whale breaching free, nets falling away, body rising in pure arc of joy. Imagine ocean filled not with labyrinths, but with songs, not with chains, but with freedom. Imagine that our choices can shape such future, that our hands can cut ghosts, that our hearts can redeem sea. For in end, ocean's story is ours, and whether it becomes tragedy or triumph depends upon threads we weave, upon chains we choose to cut, upon ghosts we choose to lay to rest. The ocean floor, in many places, is a kingdom of color, where corals bloom like underwater forests, where fish dart like sparks between branches, where the architecture of life is both fragile and enduring. Yet when ghost nets descend upon these cities, beauty turns to cemetery. Coral polyps suffocate beneath layers of nylon, branches snap under weight of plastic, fish that once found shelter find only death. The reef becomes not cradle but coffin, its vibrant hues dulled by decay, its chorus of clicks and songs replaced by silence. These coral cemeteries are not created by storms or volcanic fire, but by threads we abandoned, by traps we forgot, by ghosts that refuse to vanish. To understand tragedy, imagine a reef in its prime. Schools of parrotfish scrape algae, maintaining balance. Tiny shrimp clean scales of larger fish. Sea turtles glide gracefully, feeding on sponges. The water is alive with sound, a crackling symphony scientists call reef song. Now picture net drifting down, tangled mass of nylon settling across coral like shroud. At first, polyps beneath continue to feed, unaware. Then strands block sunlight, polyps starve, algae spread unchecked, fish flee. Over weeks, colors fade, branches bleach, reef dies. What was once nursery for thousands becomes grave for millions. Divers who encounter such scenes describe heartbreak. They swim expecting wonder and find ruin. Coral heads broken, skeletons of fish trapped within plastic, once living city turn mausoleum. They cut what they can, but nets often too vast, too entangled. Each strand pulled risks further damage. It is Sisyphean task, lifting weight of neglect from shoulders of reef. And yet some persist, removing ton after ton, choosing action over despair, understanding that even one freed coral head is victory, one saved turtle hope. Scientifically, coral reefs cover less than 1% of ocean floor yet support quarter of marine life. Their loss is catastrophic ripple, collapsing food webs, threatening millions who depend on fish for survival, weakening coastal protection from storms. Ghost nets accelerate this collapse, not only by direct suffocation but by breaking physical structure, turning stronghold into rubble. Once broken, recovery takes decades, if it occurs at all. Nets create cemeteries that persist across generations, a testament to how quickly life can be undone and how slowly it can be restored. Philosophically, coral cemeteries beneath threads remind us of fragility of beauty. We imagine beauty eternal, reefs timeless, yet here is proof that even grandest architecture can be destroyed by carelessness. It is humbling to realize that what nature built in centuries can be undone in days, by negligence. It confronts arrogance of permanence, teaching that beauty requires guardianship, not assumption. There is also irony. Nets were designed to harvest abundance of sea, yet when they drift they harvest death itself, erasing abundance at its source. They transform places of life into places of silence, reversing intention of their creation. They are reminders that tools without responsibility can betray their makers, that progress without care becomes regression. Yet not all is despair. In some regions, divers have removed nets and witnessed reefs rebloom, coral fragments reattach, fish return, colors brighten. It is slow, but it is possible. Cemeteries can be transformed back into cities if hands are willing, if hearts are steadfast. Each act of restoration is defiance against ghosts, affirmation that life still has chance, that ocean can heal if we allow. In dream you may swim through coral cemetery, branches white and broken, silence heavy. Nets drift like curtains between ruins. Yet as you cut threads in dream, faint glow returns, fish appear, color bleeds back into stone. You awaken realizing dream is not fantasy but possibility. Restoration is real if courage persists, if we choose. The coral cemeteries beneath threads are warnings written in skeletons, messages carried in silence. They tell us that abundance is not infinite, that beauty can be lost, that ghosts kill not only creatures but entire worlds. But they also whisper that ghosts can be defeated, that cemeteries can be reclaimed, that ocean still waits for redemption. The choice lies with us, as it always has. So tonight, as you drift toward rest, imagine ocean not as grave but as garden, not as labyrinth of nets but as kingdom of color. Imagine hands cutting threads, hearts defending reefs, societies choosing responsibility. Imagine that ghosts can be laid to rest and cemeteries reborn. For in end, story of ocean is not only tragedy but possibility, not only nightmare but awakening. Nets drift, yes, but so too does hope, and hope can be current stronger than any ghost. The ocean has always been a stage not only for the creatures that dwell beneath the waves but also for the ones that circle above it. Seabirds are the restless voyagers of the skies, winged wanderers who can cross entire oceans without pause, who ride the winds with mastery, who dive like arrows to snatch fish from below. They are symbols of freedom, of endurance, of resilience. Yet for many of these birds, ghost nets have rewritten the story of flight into the story of entrapment. For the sky that once promised liberty has become linked to a sea that offers snares. The birds that fall from the sky are victims not of storms or predators, but of threads. Threads that should never have been there. Threads that should never have been born into permanence. Imagine an albatross soaring across thousands of kilometers, wings spanning wider than a man is tall, gliding with effortlessness over endless blue. It dives, seeking fish shimmering beneath surface, but as it rises, its wings brush against floating mass of nylon. Threads wrap around feathers, tightening as bird struggles. The wings that once carried it across oceans now bind it, pulling it down into sea that becomes coffin. The albatross drowns not because it was weak, but because we made ocean treacherous. Its body drifts upon waves until it washes upon shore, discovered by children who see ropes wound around its wings like shackles. This scene is not rare. Thousands of seabirds each year are entangled, their wings clipped not by storm but by nylon, their bellies filled not with fish but with plastic fragments carried by nets. Puffins, gulls, pelicans, cormorants all find themselves trapped in labyrinths of ghost gear. Some die at sea, their bodies never seen again. Others wash ashore as evidence of silent epidemic. For every bird that falls, ecosystem loses hunter, colonies lose parent, chicks lose future. The tragedy of seabirds entangled in ghost nets is compounded by their role as sentinels. Seabirds are indicators of ocean health, their movements reflecting fish stocks, their survival reflecting balance. When they falter, it signals wider collapse. Ghost nets silencing their cries are warnings, alarms ignored by those who do not listen. The silence of cliffs once filled with calls is not only absence of birds, but absence of equilibrium. Philosophically, the image of birds falling from sky because of threads in sea is paradoxical cruelty. Sky and sea are two realms, distinct yet connected. Birds belong to sky, nets to sea, yet threads bind them, pulling heaven into abyss. It is as if freedom itself is dragged down, as if liberty is strangled by negligence. The falling bird becomes symbol of dreams bound, of potential wasted, of transcendence undone by carelessness. It confronts us with truth that no realm is safe from our shadows, that even sky can be tainted by ghosts of ocean. In myths, birds often carried messages between gods and men, symbols of transcendence. Ravens whispered omens, doves brought peace, eagles bore thunder. Today their corpses wrapped in nylon bring different message, that our arrogance has reached heavens, that we have chained sky itself. The falling bird is omen of age where even flight cannot escape plastic. To ignore it is to ignore prophecy written in feathers, to disregard cry of planet itself. Yet amid despair, there is defiance. Volunteers patrol coasts, cutting birds free, untangling wings, nursing survivors. Rescue centers take in pelicans with shredded wings, gulls with strangled legs, puffins starved because nets trapped their prey. Each bird saved is testament that compassion persists, that ghosts do not always win. Artisans collect fragments of nets and transform them into sculptures of birds, raising awareness through beauty born from horror. In this way, ghosts are confronted not only with knives but with imagination, not only with anger but with art. Still, rescues cannot match losses. Ocean is vast, ghosts too many, birds too numerous. For every one saved, countless more perish unseen. The cliffs grow quieter, skies emptier. The silence becomes a oppressive reminder that liberty is fragile, that wings can be clipped by threads we never see, that freedom requires vigilance. In dream, you may stand upon cliff, watching seabirds wheel in sky, their cries sharp against wind. Suddenly they vanish, falling one by one into sea, wings bound by invisible cords. You scream, but no sound emerges. You awaken with sense of grief, but also resolve, realizing that dream was truth of ocean, that silence is spreading. The dream demands action, whispers that we cannot allow skies to empty. The birds that fell from the sky remind us that boundaries between realms are illusions. What happens in sea reaches sky, what drifts beneath waves cuts across heavens. The ocean's ghosts are not confined. They expand, they invade, they conquer. Yet they also remind us that freedom is not gift but responsibility, that liberty requires defense. The albatross falling is not only tragedy of sea, but tragedy of spirit, warning that our ghosts can drag down even our highest flights. So, as you drift into rest tonight, imagine wings free once more, feathers unbound, cries echoing strong. Imagine ocean free of ghosts, sky filled again with soaring flocks. Imagine humanity choosing not to entangle, but to release, not to bind, but to free. For the story of seabirds is our story too, and if they fall, so do we. But if they rise, so can we. The choice, as always, is ours. The story of ghost nets is often told from the perspective of the ocean, of the whales that drag invisible chains, of the turtles that suffocate in silence, of the corals turned into cemeteries, of the seabirds that fall from the sky. Yet there is another side of the story, one that lingers in the memory of communities who once cast these nets, men who went to sea seeking survival, families who depended on catch for food and livelihood. The forgotten fishermen are ghosts themselves, their choices drifting across centuries, their shadows carried not only by memory, but by nylon that outlives them. To speak of ghost nets is to speak also of the people who left them behind, willingly or unwillingly, deliberately or in desperation, who never imagined their tools would become curses. Picture a fisherman of decades past, rising before dawn, repairing nets with calloused hands, his boat a fragile shell upon immensity. He casts nets not with malice but with hope, praying for enough fish to feed children, to sell at market, to pay debts. Yet storms come suddenly, nets are lost to waves, gear is cut to save boat. In that moment, survival demands sacrifice, and net becomes offering to sea. The fisherman returns ashore relieved, perhaps ashamed, never thinking that net will drift beyond his lifetime, beyond even memory of his name, continuing to catch when he no longer breathes. His descendants may never know, but ocean remembers, for nets endure. Ghost nets are shadows of human poverty as much as of human negligence. In wealthier nations, regulations exist, disposal systems are possible, yet still nets are discarded for convenience. In poorer regions, fishermen have little choice, no facilities for recovery, no resources to replace gear properly. They are caught too, entangled not by nylon but by systems of inequality. To condemn them alone is to miss deeper truth, that ghost nets are born not only of individual actions but of global neglect, of societies that consume without considering cost, of markets that demand cheap fish without asking how catch is made. Philosophically, ghost nets embody tension between necessity and consequence. A man feeding his family today may create suffering for turtles tomorrow. A decision made in storm of survival becomes echo of death for centuries. This is not merely failure of individuals, but of systems that force such choices. To untangle ghost nets, we must also untangle webs of inequality, of overconsumption, of disconnection between plate and ocean. The forgotten fishermen are not villains, but participants in tragedy larger than themselves, actors in play directed by forces of economy and neglect. There are also cultural dimensions. In many coastal societies, fishing is not only livelihood but identity, tradition passed across generations. Nets are symbols of heritage, they're weaving rituals of community, they're casting ceremonies of faith. Yet modern materials transform sacred tools into perpetual ghosts. What was once natural, biodegradable rope became synthetic, immortal nylon. Traditions, unchanged in form but altered in substance, unwittingly created nightmare. Elders may still bless nets, but their blessings now extend curses. Heritage collides with plastic, and culture becomes entangled too. The forgotten fishermen live on in ghost nets because their tools remain, drifting across waters long after villages vanish. Archaeologists of future may find nets in sediment centuries hence, fossilized nylon beside shells. Testimony not of fish caught but of deaths caused. These nets are artifacts of our age, more enduring than buildings, more persistent than books. They are our legacy, whether we wish or not. Future generations may judge us not by art we created but by waste we left, by threads that strangled ocean. Yet there are glimmers of redemption. Some fishing communities now engage in retrieval programs, rewarded for bringing back old gear, creating cycles of recovery rather than abandonment. Others innovate biodegradable nets, designed to dissolve after time, ensuring that ghost nets are not born. These shifts show that forgotten fishermen can become remembered guardians, that heritage can adapt, that traditions can align with responsibility. In this way, shadows can become light, ghosts can become protectors. In Dream, you may see ghostly figures of fishermen walking upon waves, their hands casting nets of light. Yet as nets descend, they transform into nylon, strangling fish, binding turtles, dragging whales. The fishermen vanish, leaving only plastic, only suffering. You awaken disturbed, realizing Dream speaks of truth, that actions outlive actors, that shadows persist beyond lives. Yet Dream also whispers possibility, that nets of light can remain light, that traditions can honor without harming, that future can be rewritten if choices change. The forgotten fishermen remind us that ghosts are not only in sea, but in us. We are all fishermen, in sense, casting choices, daily, weaving threads of consequence, some nourishing, others suffocating. Our lives too will leave shadows, and question is whether they will haunt or heal. Ghost nets are warning, but also mirror. To remember fishermen is to remember ourselves, to see how easily survival today can become tragedy tomorrow, to learn humility before ocean that carries every shadow forward. So tonight, as you close eyes, let memory drift toward those who went to sea before us, their hands rough, their hearts weary, their choices imperfect. Let compassion temper judgment, let responsibility temper indifference. For forgotten fishermen are not enemies but ancestors of lesson, teachers reminding us that ghosts are born when care is absent, when foresight is ignored. To honor them truly is to ensure that their nets no longer drift, that their shadows no longer strangle, that ocean once again becomes place of life, not labyrinth of nightmares. The ocean is not static. It breathes through currents, circulates heat, shifts water masses like blood flowing through veins of planet. In its grand circulation patterns known as gyres, currents spiral endlessly, drawing in what floats, holding it in vast, rotating prisons. These gyres are not new. They have existed for millennia, shaping migrations of fish, guiding voyages of sailors. But in our time, they have become graveyards of plastic, traps not only of debris but of nightmares. Within their slow whirlpools drift countless ghost nets, converging from all coasts, forming floating labyrinths so vast that satellites can glimpse their shadows. The gyres of the haunted seas are monuments to permanence of neglect, reminders that what we abandon circles endlessly, never gone, never dissolved, always returning. Imagine sailing through Pacific where horizon stretches unbroken, sky vast, wind steady. From deck ocean seems blue and endless. Yet as you peer closer, fragments of plastic shimmer, bottles, bags, crates, and among them, tangled masses of ghost nets. They drift like jellyfish colonies, their threads invisible until too late, their weight pulling beneath surface. Beneath waves, fish dart through mazes of nylon, some escaping, many not. Turtles mistake them for food, whales drag them across migrations, entire ecosystems altered by prison of plastic swirling without end. This is not island in traditional sense, but it is continent of waste, larger than nations, heavier than fleets, silent testament to our negligence. The gyres hold nets for decades, grinding them into fragments, yet never destroying them. Nylon breaks into smaller threads, continuing to entangle, continuing to kill. Microplastics are released, consumed by plankton, entering food chains that circle back to us. Thus, ghosts of ocean become ghosts within our bodies, plastic in bloodstreams, fibers in lungs, shadows of nets haunting not only sea but flesh. The gyres are haunted not only for creatures trapped, but for humans entangled invisibly. For we too eat ghosts, breathe ghosts, embody ghosts. Philosophically, the gyres are symbols of cycles without exit. They mirror human habits of repetition, of mistakes recurring, of histories circling. Just as currents trap debris, so too do our societies trap themselves in patterns of overconsumption, waste, denial. We circle, we spiral, we repeat. The haunted seas are a reflection of haunted minds, unable to break free, unable to chart new course. Yet recognition of cycle is first step to breaking it. Just as sailors once mapped gyres to navigate, we must map patterns of neglect to escape them. Legends speak of cursed whirlpools, of Charybdis devouring ships, of maelstroms swallowing fleets. The gyres of today are such whirlpools, but their hunger is for plastic, their victims countless lives. Unlike mythical beasts, they are not sudden but steady, not violent but persistent. They do not roar but whisper, turning slowly, trapping patiently. In some ways this is more terrifying, because there is no end, no climax, only endless continuation, a nightmare without waking. And yet gyres also teach resilience. Life persists even amid ghosts. Fish adapt, birds continue to fly, reefs struggle to grow, humanity too can act. Expeditions now cross gyres with ships designed to collect debris, machines skimming surface, divers cutting nets. Though scale is immense, each removal is act of defiance, proof that spiral can be interrupted. Awareness grows, and with it possibility of change. Gyres remind us of cycles, but they also remind us cycles can be broken. In dream you may find yourself drifting in spiral, currents pulling you round and round. Nets brush against skin, plastic floats around, horizon recedes. You struggle to escape, but spiral tightens. Panic rises until you realize current is also choice, that by swimming differently, you can break pattern. Dream ends with freedom, but lesson remains. That cycles imprison unless we choose otherwise. That escape requires will. That haunted seas reflect haunted choices. The gyres of the haunted seas are vast, larger than comprehension, heavier than calculation, but they are not eternal. They exist because of us, and they can be diminished by us. They are reminders that our neglect does not vanish but accumulates, that ghosts do not disappear but multiply. To honor ocean is to break cycles, to cut spirals, to restore flow. The gyres are haunted, but haunting can be lifted, if courage persists, if choices shift, if humanity awakens. So as you drift tonight into rest, imagine ocean currents cleansed, gyres emptied, spirals flowing free. Imagine nets no longer circling but removed, ghosts no longer haunting but buried. Imagine humanity breaking its cycles, steering toward future unbound. For haunted seas need not remain haunted. The gyres can release their grip if we learn, if we act, if we dare. The story of ghost nets is not only about present suffering, about turtles gasping for air, whales dragging chains, reefs suffocating, birds falling. It is also about future, about generations not yet born who will inherit seas we shape today. The children who inherit the ghosts will grow in a world where plastic is not anomaly but environment, where ocean floor is not only sand and coral but threads of nylon, where legends of sea monsters are not about krakens but about nets drifting eternally. This inheritance is tragedy, because it is unwanted, unasked, undeserved. No child deserves to inherit nightmares, yet this is legacy we are weaving. Imagine child walking along shore decades from now. She picks up shell, marveling at spiral, then notices it is entangled in thin strand of plastic. She collects driftwood, but finds fragments of net entwined. She swims and sees not endless blue but ghostly curtains swaying beneath surface. For her, this is not surprise but normal. She grows believing ocean always haunted, never knowing seas once vibrant, once filled with song of whales unbound, with flocks of birds unchained, with corals blazing in color. Her inheritance is silence. Her memory of ocean is ghost. This is weight of neglect, carried not by us alone but by them. Philosophically, the notion of inheritance forces us to confront continuity of choices. We live not in isolation but in chain of generations, each link shaping next. Our ancestors planted trees we enjoy, built cities we inhabit, carved myths we still tell. What will we pass forward? Ghost nets, drifting through currents, microplastics in fish, silence where songs once rang. The measure of civilization is not only what it builds, but what it leaves. By that measure, if ghosts are our legacy, then we are not builders but haunters. Yet children also inherit possibility. Just as they may inherit nightmare, they may inherit resilience, courage, awakening. If we act now, their ocean may still heal, their inheritance may be story not of ghosts but of redemption. The choice is ours. To leave nets drifting is to abandon them to hauntings. To cut nets, to change systems, to innovate materials, to educate hearts, is to gift them freedom. Children inherit what we decide today, not tomorrow. Culturally, inheritance of ghosts shapes identity. Communities who once sang songs of abundance now tell tales of scarcity, warning children not of storms but of plastic. Folklore evolves, myths adapt, ghost nets becoming new demons in stories told at night. In this way, even imagination is haunted. Children dream not of mermaids but of entanglement, not of freedom but of threads. Their play on beaches includes pulling nets from sand. Their drawings of fish include scars. Legacy is written not only in environment but in psyche. And yet children are not only inheritors but catalysts. In schools around the world, students organize beach cleanups, dive programs, art projects using recovered nets. They speak louder than elders, demanding change, challenging industries, marching for climate, raising voices that echo across nations. They inherit ghosts, but they also exercise them. Their determination may be stronger than our neglect, their clarity sharper than our denial. They remind us that future is not fixed, that inheritance can be transformed. In Dream, you may see children running along beach, laughter bright, but behind them shadows of nets drift closer. One child stops, picks up thread, begins to weave it into something new, something luminous. Soon others join, weaving ghosts into tapestry of light that stretches across sky. Dream teaches that inheritance need not be burden but can become art, can become lesson, can become hope. The ghosts remain, but they are transformed, given meaning beyond tragedy. The children who inherit ghosts remind us of responsibility deeper than law, stronger than economy, older than culture. It is duty to those who come after to ensure that their inheritance is not despair but wonder, not nightmare but dream. We owe them more than survival. We owe them beauty. To leave them seas of ghosts is betrayal. To gift them seas of life is love. So tonight, as you drift into rest, imagine ocean decades hence. Imagine children swimming through reefs reborn, playing upon shores clean, hearing songs of whales unbound. Imagine inheritance transformed from curse into blessing. This is not fantasy but possibility, if we choose. The nets drift now, but they can be removed, their ghosts exorcised. Children's laughter deserves to echo across seas, not haunted but healed. Our legacy can be redemption if courage guides us. The choice is in our hands, their future in our hearts. When people think of ghost nets, they often imagine the great tangles of nylon drifting through the currents, massive snarls that entrap whales and break coral. Yet the horror of these nets does not end with what can be seen. Over time, the sun and waves break them apart into smaller and smaller fragments, until threads invisible to eye drift everywhere, scattered through every ocean, ingested by creatures from plankton to whales. The invisible poison of the threads is no less deadly than the suffocating tangles, for it moves silently, infiltrating food chains, traveling across boundaries, invading even our own bodies. The ghost nets do not stop haunting when they unravel. They continue as dust of plastic, spectral particles binding sea and humanity alike. Picture plankton, microscopic drifters, base of marine food web, absorbing fragments of nylon smaller than grain of sand. Tiny fish consume plankton, larger fish consume them, and so chain grows, carrying plastic upward. Seabirds feed on fish filled with fragments. Whales filter millions of liters of water laced with microplastics. Humans harvest seafood now flavored with ghosts. In this way, nets unravel not only in sea but in us, their poison moving from hand of fisherman to mouth of child, from careless discard to bloodstream of society. What was once tool to catch fish becomes dust we ingest unknowingly, inheritance written not in myths but in molecules. Scientists have found microplastics in Arctic ice, in deepest trenches, in bottled water and human lungs. Ghost nets are a major source of these fragments, their resilience ensuring persistence. Nylon does not rot, it does not vanish, it does not forgive. Its threads fray into infinity, each smaller piece still plastic, still capable of harm. Invisible poison accumulates, layer upon layer, invisible yet undeniable. The nightmare continues long after net is forgotten, long after fisherman has died, long after community has moved on. Threads unravel but never end, their ghosts eternal. Philosophically, invisible poison is metaphor for unseen consequences of actions. Much of what we discard in life does not vanish but transforms into subtler forms, less visible but equally potent. Words spoken in anger become wounds in hearts, choices made in haste become patterns that persist. Ghost nets remind us that invisibility does not equal absence, that unseen does not mean harmless. The threads teach that ignorance is complicity, that to deny what we cannot see is to invite suffering multiplied. The poison also undermines trust in purity of ocean. Once seas were symbols of cleansing, their salt believed to heal, their vastness thought to purify. Now we know that even remotest wave carries fragments of plastic, that no beach untouched, no trench unpolluted. The sea that once symbolized renewal now whispers contamination. This shift is psychological wound, a loss of innocence, an awareness that we cannot escape consequences. To stand at shore and wonder if water holds ghosts is to realize depth of entanglement. Culturally, the invisible poison changes. Diets, economies, identities. Coastal communities reliant on fish face uncertainty. Consumers question seafood safety. Activists demand transparency. Entire industries shift as awareness grows, yet change is slow, slower than spread of threads. Meanwhile, fragments accumulate, each tide carrying more, each generation ingesting more. The poison is cumulative, both physically and spiritually. In dream, you may drink water clear as crystal, yet taste is bitter, unfamiliar. You look closer and see tiny threads, floating, invisible until revealed. They twist within, binding from inside. Panic rises as you realize no escape, that what sustains now poisons. You awaken unsettled, but dream reflects truth. We are already consuming ghosts, already inheriting poison. Nightmare is not future but present, yet awareness is first step. Invisible becomes visible when science illuminates, when stories spread, when voices speak. By naming poison, we strip it of silence. By acknowledging, we prepare to act. Solutions emerge. Biodegradable nets, cleanup efforts, policies banning discards, innovations filtering microplastics. These are beginnings, fragile yet necessary. They cannot erase what has spread, but they can prevent multiplication. Ghosts cannot be exorcised entirely, but their ranks can be thinned. The invisible poison of threads is warning that permanence without decay is curse, that resilience without responsibility is danger. It whispers that what we weave will unravel endlessly unless foresight guides us. Yet it also whispers that action matters, that even unseen battles are worth fighting, that invisible wounds can be healed by invisible care. So tonight, as you drift into sleep, imagine ocean cleansed not of all threads, but of despair. Imagine invisible poison replaced by invisible healing. Imagine future where what we create dissolves gently back into cycle of life, where ghosts are not born at all. For invisible need not mean inevitable. The nets unravel, but so can we unravel our mistakes, if we choose, if we care, if we awaken. The ocean has always been a battlefield, though its wars are rarely spoken of. Not the wars of navies clashing or cannons roaring across decks, but quieter conflicts where survival is wagered in silence. Predator and prey, storm and reef, current and shore, all wage their battles without trumpet or banner. Yet in this age, there is another war, one not waged by nature, but by neglect, not chosen by ocean, but imposed upon it. The silent war beneath the waves is fought between life and ghost nets, between freedom and entanglement, between creation and destruction. And though there are no generals and no treaties, its casualties number in millions, its campaigns spread across all seas, its battles unending. Imagine army without leader, weapons drifting unguided, killing without command. That is Ghost Net Legion, armies of nylon without master, drifting across gyres, lying in wait in reefs, strangling creatures at random. They do not sleep, they do not tire, they do not choose, and that makes them most ruthless of soldiers. In this war, dolphins are prisoners, turtles are casualties, whales are dragged into oblivion. Even corals, immobile architects of sea, are crushed beneath advancing armies of plastic. The ocean fights back with resilience, with currents that sometimes cast nets ashore, with storms that shred them, but ghosts always return, regrouping, persisting. Philosophically, this war reveals paradox of human power. We never intended to wage war on sea, yet through negligence we have become invaders, filling waters with weapons we do not even wield. It is war without strategy, yet devastation vast. War without victory, yet losses countless. The sea did not consent to this conflict, yet it bleeds daily. To frame ghost nets as soldiers is not exaggeration but truth of persistence, of destruction, of relentlessness. The silent war is not limited to wildlife. Fishermen too are caught in crossfire, losing gear, losing catch, losing livelihood. Ships are damaged, economies strained. Tourism declines when divers find corpses instead of wonder. Nations argue over responsibility, but while debates circle, war continues. The battlefield is everywhere. Arctic ice, tropical lagoons, deep trenches, shallow bays. No coast is spared, no realm untouched. Yet wars also awaken heroes. Around world individuals and groups rise as defenders, cutting nets, rescuing creatures, innovating solutions. They are soldiers of compassion, armed with knives and determination, patrolling coasts, diving reefs, sailing gyres. Their victories are measured not in captured territory but in freed lives, not in defeated enemies but in reclaimed hope. Though war is vast, their courage is vaster, proving that humanity can fight not only against ocean but for it. Culturally, the silent war changes our myths. Once sailors feared krakens, now divers fear nylon tangles. Once legends spoke of battles between gods of sea, now our stories recount battles against our own ghosts. We have become our own monsters, but we can also become our own saviors. Myth evolves, and perhaps future generations will tell legends, not of entanglement but of liberation, not of ghosts but of guardians. In Dream, you may find yourself walking across seafloor, battlefield littered with bones and plastic. Nets drift like banners of defeated army, yet they continue to snare, to kill. You feel helpless until you draw knife of will. Begin cutting, freeing, undoing. Slowly battlefield transforms, life returns, colors bloom. You awaken with sense that Dream was call to arms, reminder that silent war demands warriors, that we cannot stand aside. The silent war beneath waves is not inevitable. It is consequence of choices, and thus it can be changed by choices. To end war requires innovation, cooperation, humility. Biodegradable nets that dissolve after time, policies enforcing retrieval, markets valuing sustainability, communities empowered to protect. These are strategies. These are weapons of peace. If adopted, war can end, ghosts can be laid to rest, ocean can heal. So tonight, as you close eyes, remember that sea is battlefield but also sanctuary. It bleeds, yes, but it breathes still. It suffers, yes, but it sings still. Its war is silent, but its lessons are loud. Ghost nets haunt, but they need not prevail. If we choose compassion over neglect, foresight over arrogance, action over indifference, then silent war can become peace beneath waves. And in that peace, life will bloom again, stronger for having endured, brighter for having been defended, eternal for having been remembered. Across human history, civilizations have measured their greatness by what they built, and by what they left behind. Egyptians built pyramids of stone, Greeks built temples of marble, Mayans built cities aligned with stars. These monuments were expressions of permanence, symbols meant to echo through centuries. Yet as we gaze upon ocean today, we see a different kind of monument rising, one not of glory but of shame, not of reverence but of negligence. The monuments of plastic are the ghost nets drifting endlessly, accumulating into cathedrals of death beneath waves, vast structures, unintended yet undeniable. They stand as testimony of age, not defined by marble or bronze, but by synthetic threads, immortal yet hollow, eternal yet destructive. Picture seafloor, where ghost nets have layered for decades. They entangle with each other, forming massive domes of nylon, hollow interiors, where skeletons of fish and turtles pile like relics. These are not reefs built by corals nor caves carved by currents, but temples of plastic constructed by neglect, sanctuaries of despair. Divers who encounter them describe eerie majesty, as if entering cathedral of ghosts, light filtering through nylon strands, like stained glass of sorrow. It is haunting beauty, reminder that even destruction can appear magnificent, yet magnificence masks ruin. These temples do not celebrate life, but entomb it. Monuments not to gods, but to ghosts. Philosophically, these plastic monuments confront us with inversion of legacy. Civilizations once sought to be remembered for beauty, wisdom, art. We risk being remembered for waste, for monuments we never intended yet cannot erase. Ghost nets are unasked, for architecture, accidental pyramids of pollution. Future archaeologists may study them as relics of Anthropocene, analyzing layers of nylon as we analyze layers of stone, concluding that our greatness was measured not by what we created but by what we discarded. Culturally, monuments of plastic shape new narratives. Just as ruins of ancient temples inspire awe and myth, so too may ghost net structures. Children told of haunted cathedrals beneath waves may imagine them as cursed palaces of forgotten gods. Myths may grow around them, legends of monsters dwelling within plastic domes, of spirits bound to nylon walls. In this way, even neglect becomes myth. Ghosts woven into stories of future. Yet these myths will not inspire reverence but warning, not pride but caution. The temples of memory, however, need not be plastic alone. They can be choices we make to remember ocean differently. Communities build memorials from recovered nets, sculptures that honor both tragedy and hope. Artists weave nylon into installations, transforming waste into message, raising awareness through beauty. These acts shift narrative from despair to resilience, from monuments of neglect to monuments of redemption. They remind us that memory is not fixed, that what we choose to commemorate shapes how future remembers. In Dream, you may wander through vast cathedral beneath waves, nylon strands glowing like stained glass, fish skeletons lining walls like saints. You feel awe, then grief, realizing this temple was built not by faith but by abandonment. As you walk, you begin to cut threads, and slowly cathedral collapses, releasing life, transforming ruin into open sea. Dream teaches that monuments need not endure, that even temples of ghosts can be dismantled, that legacy is not destiny. Scientifically, structures of ghost nets alter ecosystems, creating artificial habitats where some species thrive while others perish. Certain fish shelter in plastic domes, predators adapt to hunt within mazes, yet balance is distorted, diversity reduced. What may seem refuge is actually trap, cycle of death, disguised as sanctuary. These monuments deceive not only eyes but ecology, creating false stability masking deeper collapse. The monuments of plastic and temples of memory remind us that legacy is double-edged. We will be remembered for what we build, but also for what we fail to dismantle. To allow ghost nets to persist is to accept monuments of shame. To remove them, to repurpose them, to transform them into art and awareness, is to reclaim memory, to redirect legacy. We cannot undo past, but we can shape how future tells story. So, as you drift tonight into sleep, imagine ocean free of cathedrals of nylon. Imagine reefs restored as true temples of life. Imagine monuments not of ghosts but of guardianship. Imagine that when future remembers us, it remembers not neglect but redemption, not abandonment but awakening. For monuments need not be prisons, they can be promises. And promises, if honored, can echo longer than stone, longer than plastic, longer than ghosts. The most terrifying nightmares are not those that scream, but those that whisper. The same is true of ghost nets, for while massive tangles dragging whales and breaking reefs are visible tragedies, the greatest horror may be the silence with which these nets drift across oceans, unseen and unnoticed. They do not roar like storms, they do not blaze like fire, they do not announce their presence. They move with currents, invisible to satellites once submerged, slipping through waters as if they were shadows incarnate. The nightmares that travel in silence are the most insidious, for they kill without spectacle, they persist without attention, they multiply without sound. Picture ships sailing across calm sea at dawn. Crew sees horizon empty, waters sparkling, sky painted in pink. Yet beneath vessel, a ghost net drifts, stretching across seafloor like curtain, ensnaring fish by thousands. The sailors never notice. Catch dwindles, ecosystem collapses, but surface remains serene. This is the cruelty of silent nightmare, its mask of tranquility. To casual observer, ocean appears infinite, pure, unbroken. In truth, beneath waves labyrinth of nylon strangles, killing unseen, rewriting ecosystem in silence. By the time evidence appears in empty nets, in dying reefs, in starving birds, damage is already done. Philosophically, silent nightmares mirror hidden consequences of human action. Much harm in world is not immediate or visible. Words unkind may linger in hearts. Systems unjust may erode lives quietly. Neglect may corrode foundations long before collapse. Ghost nets teach us that silence is not absence, but presence hidden, that what we cannot see can destroy more deeply than what we confront directly. They remind us that vigilance requires imagination, that care requires foresight, that guardianship means listening even for whispers. In myths, nightmares often travel at night, invading sleep without noise. Ghost nets are such nocturnal phantoms, drifting unseen, entering dreams of ocean itself. Just as dreams reveal truths we ignore, nets reveal negligence we deny. They are nightmares not because they are supernatural, but because they are entirely human, entirely preventable, entirely chosen. Their silence indicts us, showing that ignorance is not innocence but complicity. Scientifically, ghost nets kill silently because they create feedback loops invisible until collapse. Nets trap predators. Prey multiplies unchecked. Algae bloom. Oxygen diminishes. Dead zones form. At first change is subtle, unnoticed. Then ecosystems unravel. By time humans detect, silence has already shouted through death counts. The lag between cause and effect is weapon of silence, ensuring that by moment of recognition, damage is vast. Communities too inherit silent nightmares. Fishermen wonder why catch diminishes, unaware that nets lost years ago continue to trap. Coastal towns notice fewer seabirds. Divers find reefs barren, but connection to ghost nets remains hidden. Without visibility, blame shifts elsewhere, to storms, to climate, to fate. Meanwhile, ghosts drift, killing quietly, laughing at our blindness. In dream, you may walk through city where everything seems normal, streets clean, people smiling. Yet you sense unease, shadows lengthen, whispers follow. You discover beneath city sewers filled with nets, dragging lives down silently, poisoning foundations. No one else sees, no one else listens. You scream, but no one hears. Dream reflects reality of ocean, where silence hides catastrophe, where nightmares travel unseen. And yet silence can be broken. Divers share stories, scientists publish data, filmmakers reveal footage, activists amplify voices. Each act is crack in silence, each revelation turning whisper into roar. Once seen, ghosts cannot be unseen. Once acknowledged, they demand response. Awareness is antidote to silence, light antidote to shadow. Silent nightmares lose power when named, when told, when remembered. The nightmares that travel in silence remind us that indifference is accomplice, that ignorance is permission. They challenge us to open eyes, to listen for whispers, to act before screams. They remind us that calm surface does not mean calm depths, that serenity may hide suffering, that peace without awareness is illusion. Yet they also remind us that silence can hold not only ghosts, but also dreams, that in quiet we can imagine solutions, nurture courage, conceive redemption. So tonight, as you close your eyes, remember that silence is not absence. Beneath waves, ghosts drift, but so too does hope. Nightmares travel, yes, but so can dreams. And dreams, if strong enough, can transform silence into song, can turn ocean from haunted into healed. The choice lies not in silence, but in whether we break it, whether we speak, whether we listen. Every story of nightmare seeks its ending, and every ending holds within it possibility of awakening. The saga of ghost nets is heavy with despair, yet it also contains seeds of redemption, for the same hands that abandoned nets are capable of lifting them. The same minds that ignored can choose to act. The same hearts that looked away can now defend. The awakening of the ocean's keepers is not prophecy written in stone. It is choice waiting for courage. If ghosts haunt seas, guardians can exorcise them. If silence suffocates, voices can rise. This awakening begins not in governments or industries alone, but in single individuals who decide ocean matters, who see ghosts and refuse to let them drift unchallenged. Around the world, movements grow. Divers form brigades to cut nets from reefs, risking entanglement themselves to free turtles and dolphins. Fishermen return abandoned gear, incentivized by programs that pay for retrieval instead of discard. Engineers design biodegradable nets that dissolve after months, breaking curse of immortality. Artists sculpt installations from recovered nylon, transforming waste into message, despair into inspiration. Children organize beach cleanups, their laughter mingling with determination, showing that next generation is not only inheriting ghosts but also learning to fight them. These are keepers of ocean, awakened not by law but by love, not by fear but by responsibility. Philosophically, awakening of keepers reveals truth of stewardship. Humanity is not separate from ocean but intertwined, as threads in one vast net of existence. To abandon ocean is to abandon ourselves. To defend ocean is to defend future. Ghost nets are reminders of negligence, but they are also opportunities to choose differently. Awakening means realizing that legacy is not fixed, that redemption is possible, that nightmares are not eternal unless we allow them. It means shifting from conquerors of sea to guardians of it, from haunters to healers. In myths, heroes awaken to defend their people, called by gods or fate. In our time, heroes are ordinary, called not by thunder but by silence of reefs, not by prophecy but by cries of seabirds, not by omens but by knowledge. Their battles are not against dragons but against nylon threads, yet struggle no less epic, no less vital. Each cut of knife against ghost net is heroic act, each freed turtle legend in itself. These stories deserve to be told, for they inspire others to awaken, to join guardianship. The awakening is not easy. Ghost nets are countless, oceans vast, challenges immense. There will be setbacks, failures, despair, yet persistence matters more than perfection. Each victory ripples, each action inspires, each choice accumulates. Like currents joining to form gyres, so too can small acts join to form tide of change. Awakening is collective dream, realized step by step, cut by cut, choice by choice. In dream, you may find yourself standing on shore, watching horizon dark with drifting ghosts. At first you feel despair, but then others gather beside you, knives in hands, nets in boats, determination in eyes. Together you wade into sea, cutting, lifting, clearing. Slowly horizon clears, waters brighten, songs return. You awaken with sense that dream is map, showing that awakening is not solitary but communal, that guardianship is shared, that we are many if we choose. Scientifically, awakening means applying knowledge with wisdom. Policies banning discards must be enforced, recycling programs expanded, markets reshaped to value sustainability. Education must spread, innovations encouraged, accountability demanded. These are structures of awakening, necessary to ensure courage of individuals is not wasted, that guardianship is systemic, not sporadic. The war against ghosts is not won by emotion alone, but by union of heart and science, will and strategy, compassion and structure. Culturally, awakening can reshape myths once again. Ghost nets need not remain monsters in our stories. They can become cautionary tales of past, lessons that shaped future, shadows that guided us toward light. Future generations may speak not of haunted seas but of healed seas, not of nightmares but of triumphs. Legends may grow around keepers of ocean, those who fought ghosts and won, those who awakened world to responsibility. These myths will not be warnings alone, but celebrations, songs of gratitude sung by waves themselves. The awakening of ocean's keepers is called to each of us, whether diver or child, fisherman or artist, scientist or dreamer. Each can play a role. Ocean does not demand perfection, it demands presence. It asks not that we erase all ghosts at once, but that we refuse to create more, that we cut threads when we see them, that we speak when silence tempts. Awakening is not single act, but lifelong posture, a way of seeing ocean not as resource to consume, but as relative to protect. So as you drift tonight into final rest of this tale, imagine seas no longer haunted but alive. Imagine reefs blazing in color, whales singing without chains, seabirds soaring unbound, children inheriting not ghosts but gardens of blue. Imagine legacy not of nylon but of love, not of silence but of song. For ghosts are real, but so too is redemption. Nets drift, yes, but they can be lifted. Nightmares linger, yes, but they can be dissolved. And when keepers awaken, ocean awakens with them, rising not as grave but as cradle, not as haunted abyss but as eternal home.